Everybody, and welcome to today's community conversation. We'll be getting started in just a moment. As usual, we are also simulcasting this webinar on the NASW New Jersey Facebook page. So to those of you who are watching on Facebook, welcome. And if you have questions for the presenter, Brittany, you can put them in the comments on Facebook, and we'll feed those over into the regular webinar. And to those of you joining us on Zoom today for the live presentation, welcome. This is our community conversation about wraparound community schools, and we'll be getting started in just a moment. We're just waiting for everybody to get connected. Good afternoon again. We're just about to begin today's community conversation on wraparound community schools. I'm just going to wait another minute or so to make sure everybody can get connected, and then we will begin. Okay, welcome everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jeff Feldman. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Communications here at NASW New Jersey, and I will be serving as the moderator for today's conversation entitled Wraparound Community Schools, Closing the Gaps in Educational Equity and Child and Family Well-Being. Just a couple of housekeeping notes before we begin. I do want to point out that the closed captions should be running in Zoom, and so anybody who needs to read along, you should be able to see the closed captions. And also just a reminder that this webinar is being recorded for future use and will be available on the NASW New Jersey YouTube page after this presentation. And we'll also be sending a link to the video to everybody who registered, so you can all view again or share as you need to. Just a reminder again, since we are being recorded, if we do ask you to unmute, speak to the presenter, please just make sure you're professional and that you refrain from using any inappropriate language or anything like that, since there'll be a formal record of this event. With that said, I'm very happy to introduce today's presenter. Her name is Brittany Macaluso, and she is the Policy and Advocacy Coordinator at the Lesniak Institute for American Leadership. We're so happy to have you here today, Brittany. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm really excited to be here, and thank you so much to NASW for having this really important conversation about wraparound community schools. Before I share my screen, if anybody's joining from not New Jersey, it'll be apparent later in the presentation why I mentioned this, but feel free to put that in the chat. Or if you've practiced in any other state, that could also be important. But now I will share my screen if that works, Jeff.
Yeah, you should be able to do so.
Thank you, Apple, for that nice little mountain in the background. But here is the presentation. So today we are going to be talking about wraparound community schools. I'm Brittany Macaluso, the Policy and Advocacy Coordinator, as Jeff said, at the Lesniak Institute for American Leadership. So a little bit about me. Let me make it small enough. A little bit about me. If we go from left to right, we see on the left-hand side Senator Lesniak and myself and Dean Mama from Monmouth University. This was back in 2019 when I was the president of the Social Work Society and first became acquainted with Senator Lesniak. We had a teach-in about the effects of the opioid crisis, and Senator Lesniak has passed some influential legislation regarding it. So I invited him to speak, and we kind of just kept a professional relationship. He asked for certain advice from a social work lens for certain things he was doing from then on. And then this past June, I started with the Lesniak Institute. But before that, in the middle, I graduated with my Master's of Social Work from Columbia, and that was really awesome, navigating the subway. And there was a strike, as most of you might know, for half of the fall semester. So it was still hybrid and all, but nonetheless stood in solidarity with those folks who were striking. And, you know, speaking of strikes, on the third photo, I do kickboxing and martial arts. As you can see, I'm a blue belt, which is about halfway to black belt. So that's something I do in my free time, and something I'm really passionate about, self-defense and just overall, you know, well-being and mental health as it comes to working out. So now we're going to go into some background about wraparound community schools. So when it comes to New Jersey, we have the best and worst performing schools in our country, actually. So if we look on the graph here that I made to the right, we can see on the 5 first listed schools, which read Monmouth County, Milburn, Tenafly, West Windsor, Plainsboro Regional, Princeton. If we look at those, we look at the SAT scores. This was on a scale of 1600 when I did this graph. And these are, you know, just showing the disparities of the SAT scores. And as we all know, there are flaws in standardized testing, but if we go down to the bottom 5, we can see Asbury Park, Marion P. Thomas Charter School, Trenton Central, Camden High School, and Academy Charter. And yes, for the last 5, there was a 823 point difference between like the highest and lowest score. And, you know, it might just seem, okay, like not everybody is going to get the same grade on the SAT, that's only natural. But if we look at who this is affecting most on the far right column, we see the racial demographics of each of these. The top 5 and the bottom 5 schools are basically almost flipped. On the top, we see like 82% to 47% white from the highest and lowest percent. And then on the bottom 5, we see the exact opposite. Black is on top, or Hispanic. And, you know, we're looking at this, and this is just showing that this is a clear racial problem with our schools. So if we go further onto this, this actually is derived from First Lady Tammy Murphy's Nurture NJ 2021 strategic plan that just came out, which is like the infant outcomes and social determinants of health. We see infant mortality rate being highest among the Black community, and we see the highest disparities between Black and white. In New Jersey, the infant mortality rate is lower than the national average, but we have our premature births, and that comes with a plethora of issues. I was a preemie baby myself, and hearing from my parents, that was, you know, a hard time. If we look at the racial demographics and the poverty line, unemployment rate, food insecurity, these are all problems that people are facing just overall in New Jersey. And this relates to school. As you know, based on your income, you know, and your tax bracket, depends on where you live and how much of those taxes go towards the school. So if we look at, you know, income, that is also something that we should keep in mind moving forward in this presentation. So I mentioned all that background about race and income and food insecurity and everything like that. So why is that maybe important to schools, you might ask? And that's a great question. The wraparound community school model truly believes that the school should serve as the hub for all of these resources. So New Jersey must join the 39 other states. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, 39 other states have wraparound schools, and New Jersey is not one of them. The wraparound schools, as you see in the center there, the little schoolhouse, it would cover nutrition, mental health, engage in the families in the community, youth and community development, and foster collaborative practices, and of course, academics for the school.
Thanks, Brittany. And I just want to mention really quick, a few people did respond that they are attending from out of state today. We've got someone here who has practiced in Tennessee. We have somebody participating from Florida, somebody from Connecticut, also Michigan and Maryland. So we do have some folks from states around the country, and it looks like on your map here, many of those states do indeed have wraparound schools.
Yes, thank you for interjecting with that. And especially the person that lives in Florida, we will get to it a little later in the presentation, but Florida really serves as the model as to what we should all strive for with these wraparound schools. So yes, this is a great map. This map was made by our media specialist, Kevin. Shout out to Kevin. All of the states that are filled in yellow are states that do not have wraparound schools, and all of the states that are filled in blue have wraparound schools. This might be a good time to open the floor. Are there any initial reactions as to how people feel about this graph? I don't know if Jeff, you want to moderate that in the chat.
Yeah, if anybody has some initial thoughts that you'd like to share with the group, feel free to raise your Zoom hand on you, or you can just drop your observation in the chat. I do see Abby's wondering if we will be able to share the PowerPoint presentation after this. So we able to do that, Brittany?
Yes, of course.
Okay,
I can
great.
Send you the link, and then maybe you could send it to everybody.
Yeah, I think you sent me the presentation already. So if you haven't updated it since last week, I can just upload it to our website and share a link with people when I send out the link to the video after this. Perfect. All right.
All right, great. Well, for me personally.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
For me personally, this is a lot to do with biases, so I need to recognize that as well. But there were some states that I was surprised had wraparound schools, pleasantly surprised. So I don't know if anybody else shares in that same thought.
I mean, just looking at the states that are in yellow, it's interesting that New Jersey's policies usually fall in line with what's going on in California or Massachusetts or New York. And other progressive leaning states. So it's kind of odd to see New Jersey in a list with Kentucky, Mississippi, Wyoming, Montana, because we usually do follow other states in our policies and programming.
Completely, I agree. But thank you for thinking about this graph, and I will definitely share this later. But we will move forward now. So,
so can we pause? Sorry, if we pause for just 1 second, Brittany.
Of course.
Andrea just put a note in the chat that maybe there might be some information that you can clarify. So Andrea says she's surprised that New Jersey is not considered a place that has wraparound schools, because we have the that provide wraparound services in all counties. So wondering if there's any differentiation there that you can point out.
I'm sorry, you must have cut out for the minute. We have what in every county? Sorry.
The care management organizations, the CMOs.
Right. So yeah, wraparound schools are a little bit different. It comes directly from a budget appropriation from the state, which would hire a site coordinator. We'll get into that a bit later. And if the question is still there after that, I can totally address it. But the wraparound community school model itself comes with accompanying legislation. So that's why it makes it so important on a year-to-year basis. So demonstrations of states with success. Personally, I never really think about state flags until I was doing this presentation, but here are some state flags. This 3 states that have the model that most states should follow are Florida, Maryland, and Ohio. So here in this Florida model, this is all coming directly from Summer Pfeiffer, I should mention, who is the Vice President of Government Relations at Children's Home Society. She was great. I had a phone interview with her. I was really grateful to have that to learn more about the Florida model. So in Florida, they have a legislative appropriation, which means the legislator puts a certain amount of money from the Department of Education towards this program each year reoccurring. So that is 7.1 million. Summer informed me that in 2021, they asked to increase it to 10 million. It is denied, but nonetheless, the 7.1 million is still an amazing amount. And the way it looks really is the first year, all of the schools that are in the wraparound model receive the same amount, 75K. And then in the second year, after there's, an assessment of the school and planning with the partners, which would include like the local nonprofit, University of Central Florida, then they figure out what the school's needs actually are. And that depends on the budget from school to school each year, because as we all know, each individual and student has different needs. So the flow of funds from here really goes that 7.1 million from the Department of Education directly goes to the University of Central Florida. And you guys are probably like, okay, why does it go to university? Thought this was for like K through 12 schools. And you're right. So the University of Central Florida really positioned itself in a way to help with this wraparound community school model. They have a center for community schools, and their mission is that the community schools will serve as a comprehensive resource by providing technical assistance, university-assisted partnerships, training and development, and assessment and evaluation for the development of high quality community schools. So all of the money will go to this Center for Community Schools, and then the Center for Community Schools splits it up between the nonprofits. And Summer's organization, Children's Home Society, is in charge of 21 community schools out of the 29 that are in Florida. And yeah, they are spearheading it. They partnered with the 21 schools, and they implement this model with the help of the University of Central Florida. So some very important parts of the Florida model that I want to highlight is the specific services for prenatal to 3 and education. A lot of people are under the misconception that once students arrive at the school building, that is when they are well equipped to learn and ready to learn. And if students are not getting, and children are not getting the help that they need from prenatal to 3, which is the most influential time for the brain development for the children, then they are not going to be able to succeed later in life. Those 3 years of life are real social and cognitive and emotional and all of those determinants of what will go on later in life. So this is something that was not included in the New Jersey bill initially, but through my advocacy and the Lesniak Institute and other advocates, we met directly with the bill sponsor and said this needs to be added to help as well, because this is such an influential part for people who are having children to be connected to the school before the child is even in the school. Some other key parts I'm sure you could see here, but some ones that I think are really important is the on-site food pantry. If you are not you don't have the proper nutrition, you are not going to be able to focus in class. And then of course the, professors or teachers might see that as disobedient, and you might get a lower grade or something like that. It's just, it's, all of these issues are so intersectional. So if we focus on the nutrition as well, it really helps the students be able to focus and perform well in school. After school activities are also very important. I know many school districts have after school care so that people, they can do their homework and students will stay after school until family members can pick them up. But the after school activities are key so that students can feel part of a community, but also have a safe place to be when their parents or caregivers might still be at work. So now we're shifting to the Maryland model. A lot of similar, services as well, but one that really sticks out to me is they offer crisis support. So I know in New Jersey we have Crisis Mobile and everything like that. So this would be where maybe they would be able to get involved and stuff like that. And this really just, again, goes to show it's more about the community during and after school hours, not just only for the 8 hours that the student is in the building. They have adult education classes as well, which is very important for the parents of students who are currently learning. School has changed and will continue to change over time. And, it will help the parents be best equipped for their children's educational career and even overall for themselves. Ohio was another one that was a great model. Let me just go back for 1 second to Maryland. I'm sorry. The flow of funds I forgot to mention. So this is all managed by the Maryland Department of Education, and Maryland has implemented 260 wraparound community schools. And it's, the model is rooted in helping children from birth to adulthood. So in Ohio, I'll first go with the flow of funds so I do not forget it again. Governor DeWine of Ohio, as part of his children's initiative, started Ohio's equivalent to wraparound schools, which provides wraparound services, all of these services you see listed here, in all of the school districts in Ohio. So I looked that up and I was like, this must be a bunch. It is 982 schools. All of these services are offered for the children of Ohio. And there's funding attached to that, which is, helping facilitate this directly from the Ohio legislation. So here, this is something that stuck out here for me, especially as we're in a room or a Zoom room full of social workers, trauma-informed care, professional development. This is so important. I know as social workers, and if we're part of a paraprofessional team in a school, this might be able to be brought up during meetings and all, but trauma-informed care professional development days for all of these, professionals within the school who might not have had the access to education that we have had. With trauma-informed care, it'll be very important in addressing the children's needs. And homeless youth services, this is also very important. As I mentioned earlier, if you don't know where your next meal is coming from, how are you going to be expected to focus? If you don't know where you're going to be able to be sleeping that night, or where you're going to, be able to go do your homework, that's going to be the last thing on your mind, really, if you do not have a stable place to live. So, and family engagement and support services, cultural competency, which is another thing that we learn here in the social work career, but having it accessible to the entire school will be very instrumental for this Ohio model. So you guys are probably like, all right, great, we're hearing all about this, but we're here in New Jersey. So let's talk a little bit about the New Jersey bill itself. So the legislation is S2771 A1168, and this pending legislation will create partnerships along the public school, nonprofit, and local government to provide an integrated learning focus for academics, health, social services, youth and community development, and expand learning time and opportunities, actively engage families, and foster collaborative practices based on an individual and community's identified need. And that I read directly from the legislation. And the schools, as mentioned here, it would be a pilot program of 50 schools. And this is used to uplift our low performing schools. So if we remember from the beginning of the presentation, schools who are already experiencing some type of need would be, be addressed through this legislation. And those would be the schools that would be focusing on for the 50 schools in the pilot program. And it's a 5-year pilot program. So there is an assessment piece to the legislation as well. So the hope is that once this gets passed, that it will eventually transition to a non-pilot program and continue and, expand the number of schools that it would allow. The schools, sorry, Jeff, did you say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to hop in for just a second. I think it's a good point just to note Sarah Mack, who's joining us today, is the director at the Lesniak Institute, and she just provided a little clarifying information about the CMO question. So just for those of you who didn't see it in the chat, the CMOs in New Jersey are close in idea to what the wraparound schools are doing. The main difference, according to Sarah, is that in the wraparound school model, the school serves as the hub for services rather than an outside organization. So just a little clarity on that. Thanks, Brittany.
No, thank you, Sarah. Thank you for adding that to the presentation. And yes, Sarah Mack is our director at the Institute. Sarah is great to work with and also does a lot of advocacy work on this as well. So the school would support infant and maternal well-being by offering like pediatric care from the prenatal to 3 services, by offering referrals and everything of that nature, transportation, childcare services, and linkages to housing assistance and recovery management services, and nutrition, educating the community overall on nutrition and general childcare. And again, that was directly from the legislation. So here is exactly what would be offered under the New Jersey bill. It would offer training, a site coordinator, and a commissioner to survey the schools annually. The commissioner would be the commissioner from the DOE, and it would just be updated annually to see how the schools are doing. And as I mentioned, hopefully that survey long-term will see the effects that it's had in these other states. It will see it here in New Jersey, and this will be a more permanent program. So shifting now to the bill history, last session, the bill passed. This order here is 57 voted yes, 18 voted no, and 1 didn't vote or was absent that day in the assembly, and it passed its Senate committee 5-1 as well. And they both have been introduced in this session, but last session, the reason, despite these being passed, is it was not heard before the session was over. So that sometimes happens, but based on this, previous history, if we look at previous indicators, we can look to see what the future might predict. So this is a very positive in the direction of how this might look in this 2022-2023 legislative session. Here is a list of all of the sponsors and co-sponsors. If you see the 2 little snowflakes, they are what our prime sponsors are. And if you recognize any of these names of people who are the senator or assembly folks in your district, please, I urge you to reach out to them and advocate for this as well. So we're all or mostly social workers in this call. So how is this going to impact social workers? Let's talk about it. So site coordinators, they would be perfect role as a social worker. Social workers in a clinical realm already do a lot of needs assessments, planning, treatment plans, evaluations, and referrals. So that would be perfect. And this is from community and schools, which do a lot of work in Virginia and other states in the South. So this is what the site coordinator does, which is a lot of what, clinical social workers do. And the nonprofit partnerships, through the nonprofit partnerships, where I work right now with the Lesniak Institute is a nonprofit. So social workers are, as we know, in the nonprofit realm. So we could be working in a nonprofit that prioritizes access to nutrition in food deserts. So if we're in a school, a wraparound school, and you're living in a food desert, maybe you're going to be referred to a nonprofit that specializes in that. And then there would maybe a social worker on staff. And, let's face it, we can pat our backs for a minute. We're very good at being community connectors for our clients and, integrating the whole person, person and environment, the students, the family, and the community, all of those relate to how the student is going to perform in the school. So social workers will help in that realm too. So let's meet a social worker. This is Caitlin Honorato. She is an MSW and an LSW, and she is a school-based mental health therapist in a state that does have wraparound community schools in the South. So I'm just going to read a quote directly from her. I asked her what her thoughts were about the wraparound community schools, and this is directly what she said, reading quote, "Wraparound community schools would benefit the areas they're in. In order to uplift a school, you need to work with the entire community. Providing services for parents and soon-to-be parents will help start youth's lives on a positive start. Providing community support to families helps the parents get the resources they need to have their children succeed. Where I work, many clients need assistance with getting insurance, getting food, access to mental health care. I'm able to refer the clients to all of those services, including doing therapy within the school. This helps break down barriers being around transportation and access to mental health care. We are also able to give youth mental health care regardless of access to insurance, and we can also help these clients get insurance if they are unable to. These services uplift the community, which in turn uplifts the school." So Caitlin, that was great of her. This is somebody who's directly in this work in a state in the South who has wraparound schools. So this is a quote as to why, site coordinators directly from our founder, former state senator Raymond Lesniak, believe social workers would be the perfect candidate for site coordinator's position because these schools, they are experts in knowing how environmental factors impact children's ability to efficiently learn. So we're close to wrapping up the presentation here. Let's start to advocate together. This is a favorite quote of mine. Actually, it's my back cover photo on Facebook. So unless somebody like you cares an awful lot, nothing's going to get better. It's not. So, wraparound community schools are going to effectively remediate underlying issues of systemic racism that plague our communities today, especially as it comes to infant and maternal outcomes in New Jersey. Some more facts before we end here is 1 in every 10 babies are born before their due date in every district. However, Black babies in New Jersey are 3 times more likely to die before their due date in comparison to white babies. And furthermore, New Jersey boasts about, as we mentioned, having some of the worst and best schools. This would remediate that and ensure that all schools have a fair chance of uplifting their students. So a little bit of a call to action. I know people are probably just like, this is a good way to learn midday, eat some lunch, learn a little bit from a fellow social worker. But a call to action is if you would, or if you're moved by this and think that it would help impact students and some of your clients, perhaps, this is what you can do. And whoever did ask the question about having the slides, this is why it would be very important to have the slides. You can contact Senator Vin Gopal, who is, and Assemblywoman Pamela Lampett, to ask them to post this for their next committee meeting. Those are both the committee chairs in the Senate and the Assembly. And here's their contact information. And if you have any questions, maybe I'll stop sharing my screen. We can all be in community with each other now. I like everybody's names, but if we all want to have our faces together for the next, 20 minutes or so as we ask questions, that would be great too, if anybody has some burning questions.
Thank you so much, Brittany. It was a really great presentation. We do have significant time for some Q&A if people have questions about the wraparound community schools or other things we've discussed. You can raise your Zoom hand and we can call on you to unmute. Or if you're more comfortable just typing your question in the chat, we can do that as well. One of the first things that occurred to me as you were speaking, Brittany, and I'll get the questioning started. In the Florida model, you had mentioned there was the university that was the technical support center and was really central to the efforts for wraparound schools in Florida. Is there a similar technical support institution that's written into this bill in New Jersey? Or is that a pending issue that's to be discussed?
I am glad that you mentioned that because it allows me to expand on what else we're doing. So thank you, Jeff. So we're also, the Lesniak Institute is housed at Kean University. So we have spoken with Kean to see if Kean would like to position itself in this way to be the school, like similar to what USF is or UCF, sorry, in Florida. So we're working with Kean to see if Kean would position itself in the way to have this center as well and do the trainings for these wraparound schools. And being that Kean, dare I say, the Jersey fight is in central-ish Jersey, this would be a good location as well to for people to come and experiencing this this training for wraparound schools.
Thanks, Brittany. Elizabeth in the comments is just wondering if these schools are still out of district schools when they become wraparound schools.
No, so they would still be in their school district. There would be no new name of them or anything. They would just be having the budget for and the site coordinator and the training that it would be and the nonprofit partnerships within this existing school itself already.
Thanks, Brittany. Questions for Brittany about the wraparound school legislation, programs, ways you can help support it? Go ahead and raise your Zoom hand, or you can put your question in the chat. I guess another question I have, Brittany, is if there are specific communities already that may have been identified as targets for the pilot when and if this legislation is passed and rolls out?
No, so with the wraparound school legislation in New Jersey, they would have to apply, but in the legislation itself, it's being reworked to say that this is going to be specifically for low income districts and schools that have this identified need.
But other than that, I guess it would be an open process then for schools to apply to be in the pilot.
It would.
Great. And then Leah's wondering, for schools that don't currently have social workers, Are there other professionals who would kind of fill the lead coordinator role, or is this an opportunity for us to increase the number of school social workers and make sure that there are social workers in all of our schools?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that the site coordinators can be any, professional within, social worker, counselor, psychologist, or anything of the nature. But this would be a great opportunity as well to prove why there needs to be, these community connectors such as social workers within every school district. And it would be encouraged that social workers would be the site coordinator.
And then Sheila is just wondering if charter schools are eligible for the pilot as well.
Yes.
Excellent. And then I have two questions that kind of are asking for similar response. So both Felicia and Alana are just kind of wondering how these wraparound community schools are different from community schools that currently exist. Alana specifically is mentioning Patterson Public Schools that operate full service community schools, and what the distinction between those and the wraparound program schools would be.
Yeah, those are great schools. It's similar to Sarah's response as well earlier. It would just differ in the sense that there's direct legislation and new people such as the site coordinator and trainings that would directly come from the state legislators funding to help these schools as well. But if those schools already have it, and if you're working within those districts or know somebody within those districts, bringing this to them as well would be beneficial, probably because it would just enhance or advance further what they're already doing with some funding behind it. So that's always nice as well. So thank you for bringing those up. I think those schools definitely should apply.
Great. Again, if you have questions, feel free to raise your Zoom hand and I can call on you. I don't think I've seen any Zoom hands up, but I may be missing them. Elizabeth is asking in the chat if this extends to pre-K as well, or if it's only going to be targeting K through 12 schools.
I believe it's only targeting K to 12 schools, but that's why the prenatal, the prenatal to 3 services included within this legislation is so key, because that's when, to your point, Elizabeth, would the students be perhaps in a preschool type environment as well.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I missed the beginning of the presentation. Apologies, was jumping out of another meeting, but so if you had gone over that, I apologize.
No.
But at Salvation Army, we're working with our local schools here to develop some kind of a pre-K wraparound services through our social services office, so that we have kids coming here for pre-K, after school, before school, after school, childcare programs. If we can, incorporate some sort of wraparound programming with the families. So I didn't know how that might apply to what you've been talking about here today.
Oh, that is so fantastic. I'd love to talk more with you about, I'm sure everybody would love to talk more about this, but I would love to talk more through that with you and see how you get involved. I just realized something I should have done in the presentation was drop my email and contact information. I'm going to drop that in the chat right now, as I'm sure perhaps can be included as well in that post-event email. But yes, please feel free. I see Elizabeth's message as well. Being a certified wraparound coach, she would love to help as well. So that's fantastic. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Institute.
And Elizabeth is also one of our amazing former interns. Elizabeth was an intern here at NASW last school year. So it's nice to see you again, Elizabeth. And Brittany's added her contact.
Likewise.
Hi, Elizabeth. Other thoughts or comments on the presentation for Brittany?
People are excited to see Liz. That's good. I'm excited to connect with you, Liz.
We had an amazing group of interns last year, and they are all excited to stay connected and stay involved. As long as we have a little bit of time, not to muddy the waters, but are there any other initiatives ongoing at the Lesniak Institute that you want to just share a little bit about the other projects that you all are working on?
Sure. Well, tonight, in just a few short hours, we are doing a youth gun symposium, which is all about, unfortunately, we still have to talk about this. I know Jeff and I, we were at the March for Our Lives event back in June, and this work still continues as long as, mass shootings still continue. So we are doing a, youth gun symposium tonight with the NAACP of Elizabeth and Hillside, the Patterson Healing Collective, Youth Theater Ensemble, and local police and politicians as well. So we're all basically coming together to talk about this and talk about what we can be doing in our schools better. It kind of relates to, everything relates about schools today, now that I think about it. So that is an initiative we're working on. From an animal welfare perspective, we're working on a bunch of different bills. One is cost of care, and another is courtroom animal advocacy project, which program rather, which would could actually be social workers too, where advocates come and defend animals in animal abuse cases. So it's like a court-appointed advocate for this animal who has been abused. And as we know, this is not only an animal abuse issue, but one of, domestic violence as well, because, most folks, I think the FBI just released 80% of folks who are abusing animals are also co-abusing partners, children, and other people in the home. So it's, it's an intersectional issue, as many things are. On a criminal justice front, we are also advocating for mental health diversion programs. In New Jersey, we are having, we have recovery courts. They used to be called drug courts, but now they're called recovery courts for people who are dealing with active addiction while they commit a crime. And we're hoping that the same can get passed for mental health courts as well. So people who are dealing with, a mental health problem can go to these diversion courts and get help, as opposed to going through a period of incarceration, which is just going to worsen or expedite their mental health crises. So those are some other things. As Sarah, I offer you to jump in as well for many other things we're working on. Those are some things that pop into my head immediately. Oh, also puppy mills are a big issue. And now that New York just passed a strict policy about puppy mills, we fear that in North Jersey specifically, a lot of those stores that were previously housed in New York or New York State are gonna come into North Jersey, and we've already been seeing that happen. So we have some petitions for that as well. I can drop our site in here as well to see some of our other initiatives.
Thanks, Brittany. While you're doing that, we do have another question Leah posed. Actually, a really good question about how the wraparound community schools are involved in or addressing plans related to school shootings and preparation for school shootings. I don't know, I know in New Jersey, we don't have the model in place yet, but are you aware of other schools around the country that have some type of school shooting planning involved in the wraparound model?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I don't mind looking into that further and sending that to you so we can send that out to everybody after this event. But even just on an initial level, I would hope that all of the mental health services and the trauma informed care would address that as well, because that is a very real anxiety-provoking fear for students entering schools in today. That is a very good question. I will look into that.
So again, if you have other questions for Brittany, you can drop them in the chat or raise your Zoom hand. While we're waiting on that, I do just want to let you all know about a few more events coming up on the NASW calendar that some of you may be interested in. If there are any students or new professionals on the line, we have a program tonight at 6 p.m. called Where Social Work Can Lead You. And it's free for NASW student members. I think non-members can attend for $10, but we will be having a presentation from the authors of the book, Where Social Work Can Lead You. And it's going to be a great discussion about all of the places that social workers are working in our society that you may not have thought of, because as those of you who have been around the profession for a while know, social workers are all over the place, and the MSW degree is one of the most versatile degrees there is. So again, young professionals, we welcome you to tonight's presentation, Where Social Work Can Lead You. Also, if anybody is preparing for getting their social work license or has questions about licensure, our regular licensing Q&A check-ins on Thursdays at noon are starting again this week. The first one of the fall is September 22nd. And then for those of you looking for a little bit of self-care, the next entry in our self-care series is a Zoom webinar next Tuesday, a mindful mandala workshop, where you'll be working with a presenter who will talk to you about self-care and self-healing as you work the process of creating and coloring some mandalas. And then we have 2 unit events for our members coming up next week. On September 28th, our Northwest unit is hosting a presentation presenting an overview of divorce processes in New Jersey. And then in October, our Central unit is presenting about literacy and adult education. So there's some great stuff coming up on our calendar, and you can register for all those events at naswnj.org. Other than that, if there are no more questions for Brittany, I think we can wrap a little bit early and give you all a little bit of your afternoon back. I do want to point out that Razia, our engagement coordinator here at NASW, has dropped a link for a bunch of those events I mentioned in the chat here as well. And also Elizabeth is saying if anybody on the line is a BSW or MSW student who's still looking for an internship, Salvation Army Red Bank is looking for interns. So again, if you're looking for a field placement, look up Salvation Army Red Bank. So with that, I think we will wrap for the day. So we all get 7 minutes back of free time before we re-engage in the processes of the day. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Brittany, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation and all the great work you guys are doing at Lesniak. This was really fantastic, and we'll be following up with email with the links to the slides and the recording from this presentation sometime within the next 24 to 48 hours, hopefully. So just watch your email. And thank you all so much. We'll see you at our next community conversation.
Thank you, everyone, so much.